Book 1, Bazur's Plot, Chapter 46 and 47. Chapter 46, Stampepolshire, the East Village. I stepped by Tara to the pier and asked, "Where will they land?" I tried to see some kind of landmark. Tara pointed out small pier on the other side. Jack was right behind me, trying to see the small pier. I looked at Jack. What about that tree straight behind the pier? If we move them there?" Jack nodded and said, "I take the boys, you take the ladies." I nodded and started to concentrate. When I opened my eyes, I had to smile. Tara was standing in front of me and the others were lined up behind them. So had the gentleman done in front of Jack. I laughed out loud. "We are so good at this, aren't we?" That was clearly what was needed, since there was laughter and everyone just relaxed. Tora spoke. "You only move me and Tara for now until the Capritors land to the other side. They are almost there, so there will be not long wait." We nodded for understanding. I turned around so that I could clearly see the tree and started mentally prepared to move Tara from in front of me to the other side of the river to stand by the tree. Tara disappeared, so did Tora. Jack and I looked at the other side of the river, and the boats were unloading, so we could continue straight away. Myriads were new to this, so they were last in line and were looking curiously what was going on. I noticed that and said, "The only thing you really need to know is that it feels a little gold to travel like this. But it is a fast way, so you will find yourself by others very shortly. When you are there, move away from the spot, since we keep moving creatures to the same spot and we will arrive ourselves last. So we avoid the collisions." Svala nodded in front of me and said, "Thanks, that helps." Soon it was only me and Jack, and Thrain left. Jack had one more than I did, so I started to move myself, and Jack would follow after Thrain. Everyone made it to the other side. Thrain commented on the landing by me and said, landing with me same time. "Wow, that was cool, very efficient." I pulled him away from the spot just before Jack arrived, and I replied, "Yes, the only thing is that you must remember to move away from the landing zone." We arranged ourselves to our normal lineup after Tara. There was now a chance, and it was that deep claw. There was now a change, and it was that deep claw was actually first one and leading up the lineup. We started to walk the trail to the village, or better way to say, through the long village. It was like an earthy village road, one house here, one house there, sometimes more in a cluster. But otherwise, it was just a trail in between in the most beautiful and ever-changing scenery. The nature changed from the rainforest to mushroom village or swampland to some kind of rocky mountain with caves. The trail weaved in between, making the walk to a kind of wonderland for each step. I tried to concentrate, and I looked at Jack. He replied to me without me asking or him looking at me. "I feel the same, Sarah. This is such an amazing place. I barely can keep my thoughts in one place and in my task. I just adore Myria. Even Seafarer does not leave this place, and he's bit of sea, but I get him so well. If I had a choice, I would never leave either." There was no time to admire. I took the left side and Jack took the right side, and we walked swiftly forward after Tara. Jack and I had gotten so good that we could now walk really fast and still be able to scan everything. We found few cursed ones, and Garnock and Stonehide, who were the last ones, took the awakened ones back with Tora to the Varkus and the boat, wherever those were having meeting points. For security reasons, they did not talk about it at all. So if someone was listening or Bazur's members were around, information would not leak anywhere. There were more of the same kind of creatures that in the harbor tide dwarf heaven. Looked like that harbor village was having few individuals of the same creatures than here, like in a small village off. Surprise was that Bazur had only done some cursing here. There were some creatures also staying still in the villages, so these were not all abandoned. They were very cautious toward us, and they were hard to notice. Some of them I only noticed since I was checking if something was living, and that gave them away. It was actually a huge help that Deepclaw and Tara were in front of us, so they did see that Jack and I were not alone here as humans. Some creatures also wanted to stay right here from the awakened one, since their loved one was still here hiding in their own village. Tara did discuss with some creatures in the tree house when Jack and I were uncursing few stones and a tree by the houses. Tara came back and reported. The assumption is that Bazur does not like water, so he avoids this area. He's apparently only been here in the fourth wood east island 2 times. And for example, in the third wood, we know he has been cursing creatures at least 12 times. So fourth wood seems to have gotten easiest with his attack. It is very wet area and very swampy here, even though we are on land. So he hates that, and for that reason, probably he has not come here. Deepclaw said, fear of water makes sense, but these creatures are amazing. They know stuff others do not. Bazur seems to be quite stupid. Others smiled, and Tora commented, well, let's take the good news where we can. Stupid is good for us since that means he will do other stupid things too. Approving grunting was coming all over. The medical elves were not done giving remedies, and I asked, do you wish to stay home or go to the place to recover? Tell us to the recover. You heard the rest that Bazur still. The awakened creatures were surrounded by a few of their relatives who were hugging them, and even before they answered, the answer was clear. One of them said, we will stay here. Thank you for helping us. We feel quite okay already, so I'm sure we will recover here well at home. We said goodbyes and continued our walk to the north side of the Sambepol Shire, the east village in the fourth woods. This is getting complicated, I thought. I heard Jack's stomach rumble, and so did the whole rescue crew. And I think so did the whole rescue crew. Tara turned around and said to Stonehide and Garnock, do you mind going to get our lunch from the Varkins? We are almost at the north point, so let's eat lunch together before we go underwater with Aquarins. Also, can you pass the message to Aquarins that we eat lunch and if they could meet us at the north of Sambepol Shire? I assume they want to come through Bubble Drift Grotto since they prefer being underwater. Garnock and Stonehide were gone before anyone could say the word. Chapter 47. Bubble Drift Grotto, the underwater village. I swallowed my last bit of lunch. I took very little. I was nervous to go underwater with Aquarium. Jack noticed and said, Sarah, you have been on Earth snorkeling, so what are you afraid of? They said we will get a remedy to breathe underneath. So that means that it will be snorkeling with the bonus of not worrying that thing on your face and breathing through that pipe. I thought about it for a second and I said to Jack, you're right. I don't know what I was nervous about. I love being in the sea. I feel so calm there. It's so soothing. I was quiet for a moment and then asked Jack, how do you think the uncursing will go underwater? I think we will still be able to stand quite well, but uncursing will be interesting. Jack shuddered and said, well, if that doesn't work, we'll bring them up and uncurse them on land. I thought to myself, well, that's the way then. I got up and said, shall we go then? I could see the aquarians coming up from the sea. Indeed, 4 of the aquarians were walking from the sea toward us. Dora, Tara, and Jack got up and followed me. We were the only one in the deserted village here in the Sambapol Shire, or more gathering in the few houses about. Myria folk called the whole is island the same village name, Sambapol Shire. I guess it made it easier. These houses were probably not spared by Bazur, since this felt the only proper village here, and it was more dry here. So that explains why this north village was deserted. So he could avoid being wet at all. Note to myself, Bazur seems to be scared of water and wetness. So I need to remember that later. We did find before our lunch many cursed ones in these last houses were still now and who were still now sitting in the village square, taking remedies and other food from the medical elves. Since Capritors and Morberns would not join underwater, they would be going transport these to Varkuns and boats or their homes, whatever they wanted. Tara did recommend that they would go still recover to Palace for a few days at least before returning to the village. And most of them did finally agree. This part was the most vulnerable area of the whole island, since it was open and one could actually see Fifth Wood across the river, or whatever it is called. So any movement here would attract Bazur here to curse again. Capritors would keep up where we were advancing with Aquarians, so if we needed help with the awakened ones, they would be able to help us. After transport, Stonehide would return with Tim and Tom to follow our progress, and others would go to the other side with the 3 myriads who were waiting in the south side in the Sambapol Shire and practicing something that might stun Bazur. They would all go to the Fort Woods West Island, south end at the Star Willow Cove village's starting point. These island-long villages are weird, I have to say. If we were closer there, we could hold on to the awakened ones, and we would bring them there. Apparently here on the south shore, there was something called a border village. They said it was under and over the water village. That's going to be beautiful. How the village can be underwater and over water at the same time. Well, I will see soon when we arrive there after this underwater village. Tara gave Jack and I something to chew, and we did. It tasted like grass. Not that I eat a lot of grass. Oh well, thankfully not worse. Tara said, I will go with the Lady Aquarian, and you go with the males. I'm the lightest one since I'm the darkness, and so you go with the males. That will also give us options, since Dora is also light being the light itself, that we can have awakened ones under the underwater, and we can have 1 or 2 with us, and no need to go up to the shore to hand them over. But with you and Jack, Jack and Sarah, the additional load is not possible. You two are humans and more dense to pull in the water. I looked at Tara and said, if I was on Earth, that would be an insult. But since it would mean that I'm heavier, but to be honest, honest truth, I am more dense. So what can I say? I meant it as joke, and thankfully others laughed. I always love to laugh, since that helps the mood and eases the tension. But I was standing behind Aquarin and said to others, Aquarins are super awesome to swim. They will be loaded. We will be loaded for them. So they made kind of so they have kind of harness on them, and you are able to hold here by the waist. Here's a handle. Now, Aquarins, Jack and Sarah, you will scan the whole village. They can do each one side. But you need to go quite slow since they are humans and cannot speak underwater. So one tap of the hand to your back means it goes lower, and no or no. Slower or no. And 2 taps is faster or yes. They are able to hear you speak in their head, likely anyway. So let's see how this goes. We have not yet seen any underwater. We have not yet been underwater with them. So if they find a cursed one, so let's use the one tap also as a stop with an additional hand signal toward what is living. Then they will either uncurse it right there, or we will pick it up and take it to the land to be uncursed. Aquamarines started to speak to each other, what sounded like bubbles to my ear. Then they turned to Tora and said, let's pick them up on the net. We will shortly have a net that will be with you and Tara, since you are the lighter ones. Since it is not sure if the awakened ones can breathe underwater, if they have fallen in from the land. So it's better to take all the awakened ones on the land for that reason. Tara shouted quietly, Capritor. After a moment, one of them came to her and said, change of plans. Aquarians think it's better to do all the awakening only on land. So meet you all there at the south side. No need to stay behind for us. Do your normal scouting. Capritor nodded, and he was gone right away. I was holding on my male aquarian, who started to walk and somewhat floated in the water. I held on to him, and it was surprisingly easy. I relaxed my body and felt like my body started to do fishy movements behind him, and I felt amazingly free. I could breathe easily, and I also could see very well underwater. It was so beautiful. Houses left and right looked like small groups or islands by themselves. And they were clearly very populated, so all the creatures underwater had been clearly safe. I remembered what Tara said, that there might be creatures fallen in. So I started to look and scan any random pieces at the bottom of the sea. I looked at Jack, and he was taken to the left side, and I was taken to the right side. So we just nodded to each other. And we continued looking at anything that was kind of felt out of place. The scanning was actually easy, but what made it super hard was the creatures. Since for the very first time, there were living creatures everywhere. It was hard to see any faint living features for that reason. I tapped my aquarium's back and pointed lower at the seabed. He seemed to understand and took me lower. That actually helped, since the villages were kind of hanging in the sea a little bit higher. So now their living energy did not mess with my scanning. I saw the other aquarian to do the same, who was pulling Jack. We were both very close at the sea bottom now. And this was clearly easier this way. We both, Jack and I, pointed to each other at the same time that ahead of us was a small pile of rocks, just 4, but they were all living. We tapped to the signal stop and we pointed the rocks. Tara and Dora appeared with their aquariums in the middle of us, and we pointed to the 4 rocks. Tara nodded and signaled us to go forward. They went to pick them up for to their nets to be pulled to the shore. This underwater village was so beautiful. It was hard not to just keep admiring. Some of the youngsters were coming to see us, but our aquariums told them to go away since they had noticed it was harder for us to scan when there were living things around us too much. These aquariums were very observant. We found a few others too that were cursed, but very few, I have to say. Before I wanted, the adventure was over and we were clearly rising up again. This felt like 5 minutes, even though it was probably longer. I felt sad. I kept looking around to catch the last views of this beautiful village. And then we arrived to the shore. I felt my head popping up into the air, and that was that. I let go of my aquarium's waist belt and walked to the shore. If you can call this a shore. It was a part of the village that was partly underground and partly on land. There was a tiny beach there where we were clearly heading, though. Others were already there and waiting for us. Tara and Dora were carrying the net, and all the aquariums were helping them. Rocks weighed a lot in the air. Jack was coming after them. Once all of the cursed things were on the beach, Jack and I started immediately to uncurse. They were not these village members. Creatures that had disappeared. It was a good call from aquariums not to do uncursing in the water. Some of them said that they were having land lungs. Apparently that meant that they needed to prepare somehow when going underwater, so they would not have they would have not had been able to breathe underwater if awakened. So anyway, would have been dangerous. The underwater creatures were puzzled, but insisted that they could go home with help of aquariums once they would rest a bit more. And the land creatures said that they were either from the east village of Shire or this west village of Star Willow Cove. So they would also want to stay and recover home. We helped the land creatures to where the few houses were a little bit higher, so they would not be sitting at the beach and therefore have a better cover, and also help from the other creatures to recover from before going home. The Bubble Drift Grotto inhabitants were helped by aquariums to their homes underwater. They waved us by and they were going underwater. That was those 2 chapters. So let me know if you like the chapters today, and if you have some comments below. And come back for the next chapter in the same channel. Just follow the numbering. Thank you so much. Subscribe and bye. Bye for tomorrow.